Hey there, and welcome to the Healing Word of the Week podcast with me, Marissa of Marissa Moments, where you might get triggered into seeing your own reflection, but it's to reconnect you to yourself and awaken the divinity within. So prepare for laughs, resonance, and accountability through true stories, channeled messages, prophetic words, and everything in between. So I hope you're ready, because guess what? Here we go. Okay, so the word of the week is release. Release, right? So I was actually, I've been covering myself in the word in my Heavenly Father and God's word so much lately, you guys, because I've been going through a lot of things. Well, I don't want to say, sound that type of way, but a lot of things have been going on around me and within me. And so I know, just me as a person, I need to cover myself in the word. I need to blanket myself because, listen, old habits die hard, right? And so sometimes if we're not mindful about the way that we are paying attention or focusing our attention, should I say, then it's easy to slip back into old patterns, right? So today I was listening to this homily, and the priest was talking about release, right? And he said this story. Now I'm totally going to mess it up, but it's to the effect of, charge to my head, not my heart, but it's to the effect of there were these spirits, right? And I'm going to Marissa-ize it, of course, but there were these spirits, right? And they all had these attachments to them, right? And they came in the form of, like, I guess you could call them a spirit animal, but it wasn't like a positive type thing, right? It was all negative connotation, almost like a demon or, a bad habit or whatever it is, right? So these angels came to these spirits and said, hey, you know what? I want to free you, so that way you can be released into heaven and have this life, or afterlife, I guess, of abundance, right? And pure joy and bliss and all of these things, these beautiful things, right? And, I want to free you, but the only thing we have to do first is we have to get rid of this animal on your shoulder, because that's the thing that's holding you back. And he said, basically all of them said, no thanks. I don't want to do it. Except for one. One spirit said, you know what? Okay. And so the angel went over to him, and he had this lizard on his shoulder. Now, mind you, this is a story. We're not talking about a real live animal or anything like that. And I'm not suggesting that we need to start slaughtering anything or anyone. So now, with disclaimer aside, let's keep going. So he had this lizard on his shoulder, but this lizard wasn't just a regular lizard, right? It was a representation of lust, right? It would whisper these things into his ear and throw him off course. And every single time he tried to do good, this lizard was there to say, hey, but this is great and it makes you feel good, and all of these different types of things, leading him into temptation, right? And so the angel said, well, we're going to have to get rid of that lizard, but we're not just getting rid of him. We're going to have to kill him, right? Again, refer to the disclaimer. So the spirit said, man, that feels like a little hardcore, right? It feels hardcore. Like, why do we got to kill the lizard? Why can't we just maybe release him or, something like that? And the angel said, no, we have to kill him. So if you want to go to heaven, we have to end this lizard, this lust lizard. And so finally, the spirit got on board and said, okay, I want to go to heaven. I want to do what I have to do in order to walk through those pearly gates, right? And so, long story long, they ended up killing the lizard. Now, of course, before they even got to that point, the lizard was starting to whisper these things into the spirit's ear and said, I won't do it anymore. Maybe I'm sorry. I apologize. I know that I'm wrong. I know that I've been wrong. I know that I've been leading you astray, and I've been doing it on purpose. So, hey, I'm admitting to my faults. And at certain points, he just started talking, and he started trying to negotiate and all these things. And the spirit was partially tempted to say, okay, well, that's fine. At least you understood what you did. But then as soon as he said that, the spirit or the lizard would start saying these things again. Okay, that's cool. Now what we should do is. So finally, they ended up ending this lizard. And the spirit was free to ascend into abundance, into joy, into all of these things. Now, I say that to say this because we're talking about release. Another thing that priest said, I might as well just play it for you at this point, right? But I'm putting it in my words because this is how it resonated with me. So that way I can pass it on to you. If you were meant to listen to that priest, then you go listen to that priest. And that is all good. But anyway, let's stay focused. So we're talking about release because the thing of it is that most of us, we understand and we know the things that keep us apart in our heart and in our actions from God, right? The things that keep us in our temptations, in those that backsliding type of way. And this could be people, places, or things. You know, it could be alcohol. It could be a friend, right? And we won't even put friend in air quotes because, you know, that might be a really good friend. But however, sometimes we have to stop and recognize who we become when we're in the presence of these people, places, and things. Because if they are not in alignment with that ascension process, if they're not in alignment with our growth, then are they really for us? And that, again, I have to keep putting out these disclaimers because I understand how the mind works. It's a tricky little, you know what. And sometimes we will negate the entire message just for the sake of a minute detail because we say, well, that's not my friend. I have a good friend. They just happen to, right? That's that lizard. Talking to you on your shoulder. But let's keep going. Because oftentimes we can recognize these people in our lives that aren't necessarily in alignment with the path that we are trying to walk and pushing us away from our purpose. Yet we make excuse after excuse after excuse to be in their presence because it just maybe makes us feel good, right? Now, I started this off that there's been a lot of things going on around me. And I noticed that, within a couple of days that there were certain people that my energy was shifted around, right? Certain people that I would get into almost like this negative space of talking. And it felt good. I was like, yeah, right? Like, yeah, forget them. I mean, not super hardcore because listen, I'm basically super saved at this point, and not to say I'm better than anyone or worse than, less than, equal to, whatever it is, but it's making me more mindful because I'm fresh off the sands, fresh out the water, fresh out the whatever, right? So I'm more mindful in my approach to things right now because I'm seeing things from a different perspective, right? God has put some different glasses on me. So now I have a clearer view. I've always had a view beyond the veil, but now he's just kind of tweaking my vision a little bit more to not just the ability to see other people, but the ability to see myself, right? Because we can only see others as deep as we're willing to see ourselves. And so that means I have to go very deep within, and I have to acknowledge things that make me very uncomfortable about myself, the iniquities, right? That maybe I would have previously tried to project onto someone else. Now I handle people with grace and empathy because I understand that most people are just working from their wounds, and most of them are unaware of the fact that they're doing it. But we are talking about release, right? I promise I'm gonna make it make sense because in this moment, I'm able to recognize the people that aren't a part of my path or my purpose. Because when I get around them, I get distracted. And it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with me. Sometimes we have to understand that we can't put the onus on other people just because it makes it simpler, right? If we point our finger, then maybe that feels a little bit better than to hold it and direct it towards ourselves, right? It doesn't make anyone good, bad, or indifferent. It just means that we have to understand ourselves and have the self-discipline enough to recognize that maybe that fun time is not meant to be had. Because even though God, Jesus wishes us abundance and joy, it is in his direction, right? Because sometimes we can have fun and receive abundance in darkness, right? And that feels good, right? Because it speaks to our, I don't know, this like Neanderthal within us because we all have it, right? That's why as babies, we bash things and stuff like that. We have to be taught out of it as opposed to taught into it, right? That's natural. So it's fine. I understand it, but it doesn't mean to understand it means that we have to accept. And so I'm saying all of that to say this. We have to start getting into a space of self-discipline and self-recognition to understand the people, places, and things that we can no longer tolerate in our lives in order to be our best selves, right? We have to release. And I'll take that even further, release with peace, right? Because just because we release somebody doesn't mean that we have to send negative energy their way. Doesn't mean that we have to, take a hot steaming dump on them, proverbially speaking, right? It just means that they're not for us, and that's okay. It's like me and cheese sticks, right? Lactose intolerance says you should not be eating these. And I still, the lizard on my shoulder says, eat it. It tastes good. But my stomach after a while is like, oh, how'd that work out for you? Right? So I have to have enough self-discipline to be around these things or to understand myself enough to say I cannot be around these things because I'm going to end up having them. Until I get that strength and fortitude within myself to recognize my ability to say no, then I can't go. You see what I'm saying? So in that essence, we have to release and release with peace. Again, I started off by saying there's been a lot of things going on lately. And sometimes I struggle with my discernment to understand if it's God or the enemy revealing certain things, because I recognize that God often breaks my heart in order to give me help to release, right? It's not fun. It's not fun at all. But sometimes things are highlighted and uncovered to me in a way that just breaks my heart and makes me recognize I can no longer stay in this place because I don't feel safe, right? So regardless of what that lizard on your shoulder is whispering to you, you have to maybe, yes, listen to it, but that way you can understand what false news it's trying to feed you, where it's trying to keep you handcuffed and tied down and tethered and all of those different things. And whatever he's saying to you, maybe do the opposite. Maybe understand and recognize within yourself that, again, we are fallible. We have flaws. And so we can't overcome everything in our own strength. And that's just the truth. And so what happens is God will send us love notes and reminders. And sometimes they might be hardcore, right? Because sometimes that's just our personalities, that we need a hit on the head as opposed to a gentle rub on the shoulder in order to complete our mission and continue on task and stay focused, right? Again, I was saying all that because, yes, and in this moment, I do recognize that it's God making these revelations to me. So that way I am not as tempted to turn back, right? We have to stay focused. And I don't say this to anyone and everyone, but I am saying it to you because if you're listening to me right now, then yes, this message is for you. This message isn't going to find someone that it's not meant for. And it's going to be meant for you in a different way than it's meant for maybe somebody's that you're listening to this with, right? Because we all have those animals on our shoulders, those demons whispering in our ears that are telling us to continue with our complacency. Another thing that was said by it's Father Mike on the Ascension app, and another thing that he said is that you almost have to be ruthless with your release, right? And again, I have to always put these disclaimers in because I don't want you to misunderstand me. And I'm putting this because, listen, at a certain stage in my life, I might have misunderstood and be like, yeah, go hardcore with it, right? Yeah, I feel you. That's what we're going to do. We're going to, proverbially speaking, chop heads, right? We're going to kick butt and take names. Right? No, when we're talking about being ruthless with the release is not continuously turning back, not being Lot's wife, not turning into a pillar of salt. Because sometimes just turning back, maybe Lot's wife maybe she didn't have any type of malicious intent when she turned around. Maybe she just wanted to check on him, right? I just want to check on him. You ever have those moments where you start walking away from people and you start living your best life and things start to get comfortable and you feel blessed, but then that spirit of guilt starts to try to eat at you and you decide to turn around and check up on them, sending that one text message, hey, how you doing? Hey, you crossed my mind. Hey, this, hey, that, just checking in, just seeing how's it going. And then that's opening up the door for that same demon to start whispering again. So we have to understand when it says to be ruthless with that release, it's not talking about being mean. It's not talking about being demeaning. It's not talking about any of those things. It's talking about being hardcore in the fact that you refuse to turn back, right? And if you know, you know, because we have to tap into our own discernment and we have to understand that this message it's not a blanket statement. Right? It is to tap into that piece of you that is already healing and to spark that reminder of the people, places, and things in your life that maybe you need to release, but you haven't yet because out of guilt, out of false obligation, out of making yourself a martyr, out of all of these false narratives that we do to ourselves and around others to make ourselves look better in the eyes of our audience, right? But at the same time, it's just eating away at us and driving us away from our truest purpose. We have to be ruthless with the release. And if you don't feel like being ruthless, just release, right? And understand and grant yourself grace and understanding that, yeah, sometimes you might turn back. Yeah, sometimes you might. And that's okay, too. It's a part of the lesson. I've turned back so many times. I don't even know how I'm standing here and not just seasoning some food. Thank goodness. Thank goodness we're not, God isn't doing some of the same things that he used to. Am I right or am I right? Because so many of us would have been taken out by now. But I say all that, and I'm going to wrap this up because we're already over 17 minutes. But I have to drive this message home, not only just for you, but for myself. Because again, oftentimes when you have that good heart, and again, I'm not trying to make myself into like the saint or anything like that, but sometimes our hearts will make it so difficult for us to release the things that are poisoning us, that we don't understand it until we're on the other side and be like, dang. And I don't want to have that moment. I live my life in accordance to his word, and I do the best that I can with what I have. And that's the expectation that I put for those around me as well. And doing the best that we can with what we have is also recognizing when we are the walking wounded and when we are using our wounds as excuses and scapegoats to continue our negative, false behaviors, and recognizing when we need to obliterate the lizard on our shoulders, so to speak, and not look back. It's time to release. That is the word and message that God has put on my heart to share with you, because as soon as I heard the words coming from Father Mike's mouth, I started to smile and I was thankful, because it's an answer to so many prayers that I've been having lately. Right. And I'm not going to stand here or speak to you and tell you that this is going to be easy, because it is anything but. Just like that man or that spirit in that illustration, he went back and forth. Well, can't we just let him go? Can't we just? Well, maybe, right? No. What God is saying right now is that we need to release. We need to release, because also, too, we have to understand, and this is a narrative that I will continue to speak over and over until God changes it in my heart, is that when we release other people, we also free them to their actual purpose and path. Right? Sometimes we think that we operate under the assumption that it's our presence that will help them grow and change and heal and have these revelations and all these things, when in fact, it's going to be our absence. So let's not operate selfishly, right? Let's operate as he commands and continue going from there. Sure, you're not going to have a fan club following you based off of these releases. Trust and believe. I know well and where. I'm not only the president, I'm also a client, right? but it is necessary. And the way that you will know is by God giving you that peace that surpasses all understanding, in spite, or not in spite of, but despite the fact that people are throwing daggers your way. People are operating throughout their misunderstandings of your motions, right? But one day, and understand that one day God will reveal to them as well. And that day is not for you to rub it in their face or anything like that. It's for you to grant them the same grace and courtesies that have been bestowed upon you in this walk and in this mission, because the whole point is to heal ourselves. And so that way we can be a walking representation of His word, His grace, His honor, His fortitude, His everything. And that way people will see us and wonder, what do they have because I wanted to? And that's all I'm going to say about that. So remember to release with peace. And thank you so much for listening. I look forward to sharing with you. I look forward to sharing with you again next week. Remember, there's a new podcast, Word of the Week podcast, every single Monday morning, 5:55 Central Standard Time, released on most major podcast streaming platforms. Look me up, Word of the Week with Marissa Moments. And that's it for now. So again, thank you so much for walking this journey with me. The only thing better than walking this healing ascension journey is to walk it with friends. So I'm always grateful that you're here with me. I look forward to joining you on other social media platforms as well. Just remember, when you look me up, it is Marissa Moments, and that's Marissa with one S, because as I always like to say, there is only one me. So until next time, I wish you the happiest of healings, apples and tomatoes, all the things, and bye.